All right. Hello, everybody. Let us get started. Um, so first of all, I'm Ben Jameson. I'm your academic advisor. You've all received at least a couple of emails from me. Some have probably received many more than that, and you will hear from me many, many more times from now on. So just a real quick check. If you can hear me and see the slides, would you raise your hands in that participants area? You click on the participants. Oh, you can raise your hand in real life too. Thank you, Jen. But yeah, no, I can see that some people are raising their hands in that window. So that's great. Thank you very much. Looks like everything's working. Okay, so a couple of sort of logistical things before we get started. So if at any point during the next hour, 15, hour 20, you have a question, I probably can't, because everybody's camera isn't on, I'm probably not going to be watching the videos. So we probably won't do that thing that you've probably done in your Zoom classes where you can just sort of like physically raise your hand just because everybody's video isn't on. So if you would just raise your hand over in that participants box, that would be great. And then you can either, well, my preference is that I'll just call on you and then you'll just turn on your mic and talk. And if you really, really don't want to do that, you can type your question into the chat window. But of course, I'd always prefer if people interact a little bit more. So that said, I would suggest that you open up the chat window so that you can see any questions that come through, and also in case you want, well, actually from time to time, I'm going to be asking you to sort of interact a little bit like in the chat window too. So, I suggest kind of having that open. And the last thing that you might want to do in case you don't want to be distracted by lots of videos, over in the sort of video area, the second button from the left, if you hover over it, it says show small active speaker window. If you click that, it should, sometimes it doesn't work exactly the way it should show the person who's talking. But when I do that, for some reason, it's showing me Jen. And I'm not sure why that is. So sometimes that doesn't work really well. Hi, Jen. So do what you want with that. Yeah. Okay. And also just a reminder that we're recording this for all of the folks who weren't able to attend live, so that I can send out the recording later. But this is fantastic that like 20 of you showed up for this. I think we admitted 87 new students in this round. So 1 in 4. Pretty good turnout. So anyway, so let me stop this poll. It's really good to know that like almost everybody is very, very familiar with Zoom. If you have any questions about sort of the Zoom interface as we go, feel free to let me know, but it looks like people are pretty comfortable. So let's get rid of that and let's get started. Okay, so here's what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk a little bit about us, talk a little bit about you, and a little bit about sort of who we are as a staff supporting you. Talk about what academic advising looks like, what it is, what I do, how you can participate in that. Go through some stuff about sort of tips and tricks for planning your degree, some things to be thinking about. We'll go through a couple of really important online tools. Some of which are new to you now that you've been admitted as a degree candidate, so you may not be very familiar with them yet. Talk through some of the new resources and privileges that you have access to now that you're a degree candidate, of which there are many, many. So we'll do kind of a broad overview of some of them. And then we'll talk a little bit about the Harvard Network, how you can, some sort of tips and tricks for helping you to get a little bit more connected sort of with your classmates and with the institution if you choose to do that. So there we go. So here's us, right? So the admissions advisors down there on the bottom right, you interacted with one of the 3 of those folks. So then you get me, your academic advisor, and then Laura Wilcox and Megan Thompson are the sort of they're the sort of academic directors of the program. So they primarily work on the faculty side. So Laura and Megan are facing faculty. I'm facing you. So you'll usually interact with me rather than Laura and Megan. If you ever make sort of a special request for a course to count towards a requirement that it doesn't ordinarily count towards, or something like that, you may get involved with Laura and Megan from time to time. Yeah, so that's who we are. So here's a little bit about you. And the reason I put this information up there is that I think it's really helpful for you to see and be aware of the breadth and diversity of sort of experiences and sort of life situations that people in this program and just at the Extension School in general are in. You've probably already been exposed to quite a lot of that in the classes you've taken so far. But I just want you to, I want to sort of keep pointing this out because there's so much that you can learn from your classmates in this program, and I think it's like a vital part of doing this degree that you sort of get the most that you can out of the interactions with your classmates too. So there's your age range, right? Your median age is 34, 58% male, 42% female. Your degree focus there. A little bit more of you management than finance. These numbers are very consistent over the course of the years that I've been involved with the program. Emanuela is the median age. Congratulations. You're perfect. You're the exact right student. So a little bit more here. So you can see 18% of you live outside the United States. 54% of you live in the U.S. outside of Massachusetts, and 28% of you live in Massachusetts. So cool, like really neat range all over the place there. And then industries, so the sort of big four are IT, healthcare, education, research, and financial services, but there's this huge other sort of range of things that people do. And again, I just say that because you can learn an awful lot and sort of be exposed to a lot of different sort of diverse ideas from interacting with your classmates. So just sort of have that in the back of your mind as you're doing your thing. Let's do a quick little thing here, a little warm up for the chat. Just type in where you are right now into the chat window so we can just see what the range is today. Alston, Mass, just across the river. Yes, Laura, I'm going to send out both the slides and a recording of the presentation itself that you can see later. Wow, people are all over the place. Elliot in Bahrain, that might be our farthest, the farthest from me. Tony Booker, I am from Arlington, Virginia. Fantastic. Home of the cemetery and other important things. Oh, Hawaii, Eric, nice. Dubai, I like seeing people from all over the place. It's fantastic. Okay, well, welcome everybody. That's great. What does I see? Oh, 2 people in Dubai. Cool. And Indonesia. Oh my God. Is it in Indonesia? It's probably really late at night, I think. Are you about 12 hours ahead, something like that? Maybe we don't need to go into all that. Okay, so let's talk about what academic advising is. I know a lot of folks who come to me haven't actually interacted with an academic advisor kind of ever before. I think, typically in undergrad, you kind of can or cannot interact with your academic advisor, and a lot of people just kind of don't ever. So quick rundown of what I do and sort of what you can come to me for. The bottom line of all of this is that I want you to feel like you can come to me for kind of everything. And at the very least, I can sort of get you started down it or sort of get you connected to the right people who can sort of answer your question better than I can if I can't. But I can always be your starting point. But here are some of the big things. So obviously course selection. I spend a lot of time learning about the classes and about your professors, and so I can help you with things like matching your learning style to a professor's style, helping you sort of connect your learning goals with the topics, some of the topics that we teach about, helping you figure out the on-campus versus online issues, balancing the workload of different classes together, all that kind of stuff. Connected with that is making sure that you're sort of clear on your degree requirements. that you just kind of like understand the path that you need to be on for completing your degree. This degree is fairly straightforward, just kind of 12 classes and out you go. But even so, help folks with that. If at any point you want any kind of academic assistance, sometimes this is things like getting help with your writing if you don't feel like writing is a big strength of yours, and we'll talk about sort of what those resources are a little bit later. If you're taking an econ class and you're swimming a little bit with the math, we have resources to help you out with the math. So it's Harvard, so there's every kind of academic assistance you can imagine, pretty much, but sort of helping you get connected to that, as well as sort of any other resources that would be helpful to you. And again, we'll talk about what some of those are a little bit later. And life planning, I'm aware that life planning is kind of a funny way to say this, but I mean it really in terms of like, if you're about to have a baby, or you're about to move across the country or overseas, or you're changing jobs or something, that can have a really significant impact on your decision making about how you're pursuing this degree. And so I think it's really helpful if you're in the middle of a big transition or looking towards a big transition to reach out to me. And so we can just kind of talk about like what the ramifications of that are, and if there are ways that I can help sort of smooth that, or make you sort of make decisions that'll sort of make that smoother for you. So, so that's kind of what I do. But again, you should never second guess yourself. You can always shoot me an email or set up an appointment, no matter what your question is, and I can either figure out the answer to it or sort of gauge the person who can. So, your first point of contact. Okay, some thoughts about planning your courses. And I'm aware that some of this is probably maybe like a little bit simple, like maybe a little bit obvious. But I like to talk these things out because you folks have full sort of lives, and you got a whole situation that you're living, and so I like to say things even if they seem a little bit obvious, but maybe you haven't sort of thought about them in quite this way. So the first really important one is, of course, to be like really clear on on why you're here. That's usually kind of the first question I ask people in an academic advising one. It was like, why are you getting this degree? And I think a lot of people are really clear on that, but for some folks, maybe it's a little bit squishier. And I think having a sense of what you want to come out of this degree with, is it the credential that matters? Is it a particular set of skills that you need to develop? Is it just that you need to have a master's degree in general? Sort of what it is that you want to come out with this thing, because that can obviously make a really big impact on the courses that we select and the other things that you decide to do while you're getting this degree. Are you trying to get a promotion? Are you trying to launch your career in an entirely different direction? All those things can have a really big impact on the decisions that you make throughout the degree. So let's do another little chat interaction. Why don't you type in the chat kind of briefly, like why you're doing this degree in a few words, like what your goal is. And I may ask a couple people to elaborate a little bit. Reinventing myself, that's great. Personal development, yep. Couple of advancing career. Emanuela, can I call you out? Would you be interested in turning your mic on and telling us briefly what you mean by reinventing yourself? Emanuela, can you hear me? Oh, can't talk at work at a lunch break. Okay, fair enough. Well, how about, I said Jamie works in the TV industry, advanced at work. Yeah, in mail, go ahead and type. Well, Jen, do you feel like talking a little bit about are you transforming your professional and personal life?
Sure, I have a theater background. I can always talk. That's not a tough one for me. Um, there's a deeper personal side to this as well as the professional side. Hence, the theater background led to a lot of inconsistent employment, a lot of day jobs, survival jobs, quote unquote, in many different fields, both in the corporate sphere, nonprofit. I've had a ton of work experience. My favorite has been the performative, public speaking, presenting, teaching, and I'd like to keep those core skill and work things in my work life with writing. The arts and humanities, I really have an abundance. I've got that in spades. That's my wheelhouse. I never, for various reasons, I had sadly a very dysfunctional and toxic early home life, which prevented me from taking advantage of some educational opportunities earlier on. So part of also reinventing and taking back my life and my goals is filling in some of these holes that I believe are in my knowledge, particularly in finance, in business, in management, in everyday functioning in the world, particularly this modern economy. To me, these are essential skill sets now that I've never been able to explore, and I really want to now, and I'm ready for it.
That's great. That's a great story. Um, cool. Thanks. Thanks for sharing that. Um, so, what are your goals, right? How about school life balance, right? So this is one of the big ones. And I always say this to everybody, and I know this sounds simplistic, but the thing that happens with people is sometimes people get sort of surprised in the middle of a semester by, wow, this class had like more of a workload than I expected, or like these two courses together, they're like these major assignments are happening at exactly the same time, or I needed to be traveling for work this entire week while I needed to be studying for this big exam. And those kind of things happen in life, right? However, a lot of that can be mitigated with really good research and thought before you register for courses. And the tools are all there. So I think it's so important to sort of every semester that you're going to take classes to really lay out a pretty detailed calendar. Doing your research on your classes, looking at the syllabi of the classes really closely, and looking at the sort of the very particular expectations of the instructor in terms of how much you're expected to be participating in class, like what the reading load is like for every class meeting, when the big assignments are taking place. Are there group projects, which everybody who's ever done a group project knows takes more time, significantly more time than an individual project would? When are you going to be studying for exams? And kind of lay all that on top of your like personal and work calendar and figure out, are there big conflicts here? Are there sort of deal-breaking conflicts here? Or do I just kind of need to prepare myself like, okay, that week is just going to be a monster, so I have to sort of get ready for that, and then it's just going to be a crazy week. But all of that stuff is sort of doable if you can plan for it in advance and you kind of set yourself up for it. So taking very, very seriously the how complex the work-life balance can be, I think is really important, and will sort of aid significantly in your ability to sort of succeed in all of your classes and sort of make your way through the degree. Kind of along those lines, planning for the residency requirement is really important for anybody who doesn't live locally, which is the majority of you. It can be tricky to figure out how you're going to get here for at least those 4 classes. And the thing that I see that happens every once in a while is if you leave it, if you kind of put it off to the end of the program, sometimes people get stuck with like taking a class that they weren't really that interested in taking because it's the one class that satisfies the requirement that they need it for, and also the residency requirement. So I don't want to see people get into that situation, or see a situation where you have to do all kinds of like crazy travel planning because the weekends sort of didn't line up properly. And and you have sort of like lots of on-campus visiting to do, sort of say in one semester. So I think the best way to handle the residency requirement is to sort of continually make progress on it. Take one every once in a while, so that you're as you're getting close to the end of the program, you're getting close to the end of your residency requirement too. But again, really advanced thinking about it, and also not assuming that every class that you want to take on campus will be offered on campus in subsequent years. Instructors change, course offerings change. The same instructor who's teaching the same course might teach that course online next year instead. So now that course that we were offering this year that was satisfying a residency requirement next year might not. So building in some flexibility for yourself to sort of be able to adjust to things like that. Elliot asked about the GPA requirement for the executive programs. I think you're talking about the Kennedy School program, and I'll talk about that a little bit later. In fact, really soon, actually. So hang tight. So, I mentioned before about doing your research on the courses. We're going to talk a little bit more about that, about one of the sort of research tools that you can use in a little bit. But again, reading the syllabi is totally crucial. Just kind of have to do it, like read them in depth. What you've noticed, I'm sure, is that some syllabi don't get posted until like pretty close to the class starting. I really wish that we had a way to sort of require faculty to post the syllabi, but by a particular time, but we don't. But what you can do is, I don't know if everybody has seen it yet, but on the bottom of our website, just our regular extension.harvard.edu website, there's an archives link, and you can go back into previous versions of our website and look for previous iterations of a course taught by the same instructor. Look at those old syllabi and at least get a sense of what the expectations of that course are. Obviously you can't depend on dates and page numbers and things like that, but you can see, this is the kind of course that has a midterm and a final, or this has, weekly problem sets, or kind of whatever it is. And in my follow-up email to this webinar, I'll send out a link to those archives and an explanation for how to use them a little bit. But finding the syllabi for the courses you're interested in, one way or the other, either on the current website or in the archives, is crucial. Of course, paying really close attention to what requirements your courses fulfill. And to do that, you're going to use, I know that you can search for courses in online services in the place where you actually register for your courses, but you want to make sure that you use the course catalog on our website and look for and go into that management degree courses area, because that's the only place that'll show you which requirements each of your sort of eligible courses will fulfill. If you're having trouble with using that, or you have no idea what I'm talking about, make sure that you reach out to me, set up an appointment, or shoot me an email. So we can make sure that we sort of get you on track with that. But that degree course search tool is that you kind of can't live without it in this program. So making sure that you're using that. Another part of doing your research is making sure that you're paying attention to prerequisites. The thing about prerequisites for us is that we're never going to say, if you haven't taken the exact prerequisite that's listed on the course description, we're never going to disallow you from taking that course, because we know that you could have taken a similar course at another institution, or you could have sort of relevant work experience that gets you that same content knowledge. But it is important that you're just really honest with yourself about whether you have that content knowledge or not, one way or the other. And the best way to do that is to look at the prerequisite course and read the syllabus for that course and just see, how comfortable am I with those topics? If you are, fantastic. If you're not entirely sure, if you can't quite tell, you can always reach out to the instructor of the course that you're considering taking and just saying, hey, I'm really interested in your course. Here's a little bit about my background. What do you think? Like, do you think I'm sort of properly prepared for this course? Instructors tend to respond well to those questions because it's in their interest that the people who enroll in their courses are ready to engage at the level that they want to engage at. So they're gonna they're going to be honest with you, and they're going to respond to those questions. So feel free to do that if you're not totally sure. Jamie says that reached out to a couple of professors, but only one responded. Yeah, sometimes that happens. Sometimes you have to ping them more than once, maybe. If you're having a hard time getting a response, you can always check in with me, and I can try to sort of help you kind of figure it out too, based on my experience with that course. But Jamie, good effort. You did the right thing. Sometimes before a course starts, instructors are kind of like focused on other things, and in my experience, generally the responses are good. I'm sorry that you had a dud that one time. And the last thing about doing your research that's really crucial is reading the course and instructor ratings. So that's where you get to read the previous students' evaluations of the courses that you're considering taking. You just got access to this when you became a degree candidate, and we're going to look at it in a little bit of detail a little bit later. So if you haven't seen that yet, don't worry about it. And that's all I'll say. We'll come back to that. Okay. And sort of final thought about course planning is to be thinking about certificates. So the deal with certificates is that you can use your degree courses and sort of overlap them with a certificate as well, without anybody's permission or anything. You can just do it. So the question then becomes, is there a certificate that would be valuable for some reason, and does that make it worth sort of picking your courses accordingly so that you're earning a certificate while you're earning a degree? And I'll say a word about, in my experience, why people are typically earning certificates along with their degree. And it seems to me that it's some version of like a resume hole filler. Like you're saying to the person who's reading your resume, okay, I haven't done marketing in my professional life so far, so you haven't seen it on my resume, but you can see here by this certificate that I've like studied it in a really targeted way, and so I'm ready to sort of incorporate that into my work, into this job that I'm applying for that has a marketing component to it. So that might be a way to kind of say, to sort of fill that gap in your resume. So people have other reasons to pick certificates. The one thing that I'll say that I think is important to think about when you're deciding whether or not to get a certificate is why you would be getting the certificate. Is it because you need the content knowledge that comes with that certificate, or is it because you need the credential itself? The reason that decision matters is that if it's just the content knowledge that you need, it's possible that pursuing a certificate might kind of pigeonhole you into only taking certain types of classes that might restrict you more than you want. Like you might just decide that it's better just to take the classes that you need so you soak up all the knowledge that you need to get, and you didn't really need that credential. However, if you decide that sort of for resume purposes or for job searching purposes, for whatever it is, it would actually be helpful for you to have that credential, that's a different thing. But I think getting clear, again, back to this sort of what your goals are, getting clear on what your goal is with pursuing a certificate will help you decide whether that's the right path, what certificate you might be interested in, and like that. So let's do another quick question. Why don't you type in the chat box if you're considering pursuing a certificate right now, and what one it is. Let's kind of see if we've got anybody thinking about it right now. And Manuel already got one. OB, cool. Strategic management and real estate, real popular ones for sure. Erica, would you be interested in telling us why you're thinking about the OB certificate? Erica, are you there? Cool, yeah, you go ahead and just unmute yourself. And
okay, I guess I should put on my mic. Well, I've been working at Whole Foods Market for like 8 years now, and the first class I took with the school was Leading Through Change. And I was just very inspired and excited by the course, and felt like of the reasons going into the program most related to my job and wanting to advance my career, that's where I was most engaged and where my strengths might lie. And I don't know if that's the right reason for choosing to want to do that, but that's where I'm at right now.
That's great. Yeah. I mean, again, I think the question is it the certificate that you want? Like, is it the credential that's useful, or is it just the sort of knowledge? Because you can always you can pick your courses according to sort of your interests too. And if those happen to align to a certificate, great. I just don't want to see people arbitrarily picking a certificate and then being restricted more than is helpful in terms of the courses that they take. But if it lines up, that's fantastic. So I saw one person say, considering a few and not sure yet, need to make that advised appointment, come on in and do that. I want to address something that Jamie said. So Jamie says, hoping to combine digital with management. Goal would be a management master's with a digital focus. So that's interesting. So we have a few kind of courses, particularly like in the marketing area I can think of right now, or maybe one or two sort of analytics courses that have a digital component to them. But what a few people do is, so say for example, you wanted to get like a corporate sustainability certificate. Because that was going to be that was the sort of the area that you wanted to focus in, and it was helpful to have that credential on your resume. There may not be enough courses in your degree to completely earn that certificate, but if you really wanted to earn the certificate, you could use whichever degree courses you can towards it, and then take the extra courses either while you're pursuing the degree or after you're done pursuing the degree, and finish up the certificate that way. So the certificate and the degree are separate things. You don't need to earn the certificate entirely in the bounds of when you're pursuing the degree. I hope that kind of made sense to everybody. So let me actually pause for a moment. And Erica, thank you again for sharing that. Why don't I pause and just see, does anybody have any questions or thoughts about anything that we've talked about so far? Elliot, Tony, and Erica, I see that your hands are up. I assume that was from before, right? Elliot's nodding yes. So Elliot, I'll lower your hands. Tony and Erica, if you have questions, feel free to pipe up, but I imagine that was probably just from before. Erica says yeah, they're all said before. Okay, cool. Tony, I'll lower your hand. Any questions or thoughts right now? Okay. Let us discuss the residency requirement. So I said we were going to get into it a little bit more. Again, it can be tricky for some distance folks, requires some thinking in advance. So I want us to start talking about it early on. So I'm going to talk about a few sort of particular tips and tricks that sometimes people have used to help move the residency requirement along. Of course, you can always take courses on campus. So if you live locally, fantastic. If you're one of the very few people who are lucky enough to be able to take a 4-month sabbatical from your job and move to Cambridge and take classes on campus, I've had a few people do that. It's a great experience if you can swing it, sort of getting the full sort of residential, Harvard experience, but I acknowledge the vast majority of you are not able to do that with good reason. So there are those required on-campus weekends, and I just want to be clear that everybody understands this. Those courses that are called live web conference with a required on-campus weekend, that course satisfies the residency requirement in the same way that a purely on-campus course does. And what some people, especially folks who live very far away, for whom traveling to Cambridge is a whole thing, is a whole project, what some people have tried to do, it's great if you can swing it, is if you want to try to take 2 on-campus weekend courses in the same semester, and you pick 2 courses that have back-to-back on-campus weekends, so that you make one trip to Cambridge, you can stay here for essentially a week and a half, if you're able to sort of do that with your job and with your family and other commitments, and then in one trip take care of essentially half of your residency requirement because you'd come for 2 weekends. So that's kind of a little trick that I've heard occasionally people have tried to do. Again, it's tricky to line that up, but if you find an opportunity to do that, it can be helpful. So there are those summer and January terms, right? So the January term is a 3-week short session. It's basically like being a full-time student for 3 weeks, but those courses satisfy the residency requirement just like any others do. And then the summer session, we have 2 different types of terms. There are the 3-week terms and the 7-week terms. Now, the 3-week terms, we only offer courses on campus. The 7-week terms in the summer, you have to be careful because we do offer some online courses, but we offer some completely on-campus courses, and we also even offer a few courses with on-campus weekends in that longer summer session. So all of those types of courses will satisfy the residency requirement. A note about summer in January, if you're going to do one of those like 3-week courses, and just come to campus and sort of bang the whole thing out, it's super intense. Like I said, it's like being a full-time student for those 3 weeks. And I usually encourage folks to try to not work at all or severely curtail their sort of work expectations while they're doing those. Yeah, basically, you're in class like 12 hours a week, and every day you have about the amount of work that you would expect to have in a week of a regular 15-week course. So they're super intense. But people tend to love coming to Cambridge for that experience. It's very intense in terms of like spending a lot of time with your classmates. You get to know your instructor pretty well. If you come in January, you can like experience Boston in winter, which is, it's a cultural experience. So anyway, if you're considering one of those short sessions and you want to kind of talk it through, like, is that going to work for me? Set up an appointment with me, and we can kind of talk it through. I already talked about the possibility of coming to Cambridge for a semester. Again, I know that not many folks can swing that, but there are some neat advantages to being on campus, in terms of like fully getting access to the resources that are around here. So if that's something that you can swing, talk to me about it, and we'll figure out what we need to figure out. A quick note down here. So those courses that are called on campus or online, where you have we used to call these on campus with an online option, but this year we changed it to on campus or online, but those mean the same thing. Those, to be really clear, do not satisfy the residency requirement, even if you come to every class meeting in person. And the thing there is that you have to be required to come physically on campus to the course in order for it to count towards the residency. So if you're unclear about any of that, let me know, but that's sort of the basic rule. And then for all of my international students out there, I sent an email to international students about sort of thinking through visa regulations, but you got some info there's some info on our website, and we can also talk about it one-on-one. You just want to be really careful that you understand the visa regulations. We've had people being turned away at the border because they had the wrong visa type. So it's something to take pretty seriously now. So anyway, talk to me about it more if you have questions about it. And I'm just looking at these questions on the chat. Quite a meeting on campus multiple times during one course. Does each on-campus meet for that one course? Laura, there's only one course that I'm aware of. So there are courses that are in the on-campus format that only meet on campus, but you're talking about a course that meets online but has multiple on-campus meetings, I think. Tell me if I'm interpreting that wrong. Yeah, so there's only one course that we offer that's like that, as far as I know, unless I haven't caught one. There's a consulting course that meets like that, and if I'm right about that, if that's the course that you're thinking of, or if there's another course that I haven't caught yet that we offer in that way, the entire course counts as one of your 4 on-campus courses. So it's not every time you come to campus that counts as one of your 4. You want to think of it really as you need 16 credits of courses that have an on-campus component to them. So one course that meets multiple times on campus, although again, I think there might only be one of them, is only counted as 4 credits towards those 16 credits. Talk about one more residency option, and this is somebody mentioned this in the chat a little while ago. So this is the Kennedy School program. So this is a thing we started, I think, 2 years ago. So the Kennedy School, which is the school of government, graduate school of government here, offers a variety of different one-week executive education programs that are just open to the public. Anybody can apply to them. They're selective, but anybody can apply. We have an arrangement with the Kennedy School where there are a select few programs that they offer that we will accept as your entire residency requirement. So if this was something that if you decided that making these 4 different trips to Cambridge was just going to be too much of a hardship, one way to mitigate that would be to do a 1-week Kennedy School executive education program, and that takes care of your entire residency. It doesn't give you any course credit. You still need to take 12 courses, and they're expensive too. They're like $8,000, $8,500. So that's a consideration. The people who have done them, maybe we have about 15 folks or so who have done them so far since we started offering them. They think they're great. The Kennedy School is great. So I'm sure it's a great experience. It's just a matter of like, does that work for you in terms of your time and your budget and so the whole thing. You can see up here that there are a couple of restrictions. It's really just that you need that 3.5 GPA and you need to have some work experience. That's a requirement that the Kennedy School has. And again, they're selective. So if you apply to us essentially for permission to apply to the Kennedy School, and then if we give you permission, then you apply to HKS, and they have their selection process. So there's no guarantee that you get in if we approve you for it. But anyway, something to consider. There is nothing like that running at the business school, Gene. And Elliot, it's 3.5 at the time that you're applying for that Kennedy School program. So if Kennedy School thing is something you're interested in, there's a little bit more information about on our website, and you can always just set up an appointment with me, and we can talk about it. So again, pretty expensive, but a cool option if that's available to you, and that sort of works in your schedule. So let me pause again there and see if anybody has any questions about any of the sort of residency requirement related stuff that we talked about. Josh asks, can you apply after getting a 3.5? I guess I don't understand your question. If at any point your GPA is at a 3.5 or higher, you can apply. Is that what you were asking? Yeah. So if at the point that you're applying your GPA is a 3.5, great. If it's below a 3.5 right now and you get up to a 3.5, then you can apply. Not asked because it has to be 7 to 10 years. I'm interested if I only have 5 years of experience. I don't know. Now that's an interesting question. I would say you could certainly go ahead and apply to us for approval, and we would kind of just take a look at your experience and see if we think there's a decent chance of you getting approved. But then I don't know how precise the Kennedy School is in terms of its requirements. These programs are designed to be sort of for middle management folks. So they do want to make sure that people have some robust work experience, but I don't know how picky they are about it. So I would say you could certainly go ahead and apply to us. The approval process for us is simpler than the one for the Kennedy School. So not check in with me about the process for that. We'll do it. Jamie says, campus housing. How many times during the year we could stay on campus for residency weekend? Right, good question. The only time that extension students can get on-campus housing is in the summer, for those summer sessions. For the residency weekends, for the January session, all of that, there isn't on-campus housing that you can get. We have a pretty good section on our website that has a bunch of different sort of housing options to consider when you're visiting campus, either for the January session or an on-campus weekend. We have a few sort of arrangements with the hotels nearby, and there are a couple of other kind of interesting money-saving ideas. Some of them are a little bit wacky, but something to think about. Jamie, look on our website for that, and if you have a hard time finding it, just let me know, and I'll point it out to you. But yeah, alas, no on-campus housing except in the summer. So, Gina asks, can we apply and still attend an HES class in person for the rest of the remaining? Oh, absolutely, yeah. If you decided to do the Kennedy School program for your residency requirement, but then you still wanted to take other classes that we offer that are offered on campus. Of course, yeah, you're not restricted there. This is just the way to sort of waive the requirement. But yeah, for sure. Elliot asks about the grade letter numeric value breakdown. Yeah, good question. So this is about sort of how your GPA is calculated. So the system is A is a 4.0, A minus is a 3.67. So it's broken into thirds, right? So A minus goes to 3.67, B plus goes to 3.33, and B goes to 3.0. So then 3.0, 2.67, 2.33, 2.0, like that. And you can calculate, I mean, the way that we calculate our GPA, I mean, the simple version of it is just add up all your grades, all the numerical values of the grades, and divide by the number of courses. And that's pretty much it. So, any other questions about residency related stuff as I drink? Oh, I'm sorry, Laura, I just saw your hand. Sorry, I stopped looking at hands for a minute. Did you want to turn your mic on and ask your question, or was that a question from before? I think Laura did ask a question in the chat, so I wonder if that was the same question. Laura, do you have a different question? Okay, well, Laura can get back to me. Oh, Jen asks, can you clarify what a passing grade is for each class? Yeah, sure. Sorry, I was just momentarily distracted by the fact that it's so humid in my office that this paper feels like, it's like cloth, it's like a shirt. It's gross. Passing means two different things. Getting degree credit for a course, you have to get a B minus or higher. Getting academic credit at all for the course just means you get above an E. So like if you take a course and you get a D, say, you get academic credit for it. It goes on your transcripts, but that doesn't count towards your degree. So all your degree courses, you have to have a B minus or higher. That is the story there. Does a course in progress reduce the current? Oh yeah, Elliot, your current courses don't factor into your GPA at all. Yeah, when we're dividing by the number of courses, that's the number of courses you've taken and completed and have a grade for. Anything else about that before we move on? Okay, let's keep going. You can always interrupt me later. Okay, so online services. So, I should address this before we move on. Eric asks, if you fail a course, can you take it again? Great question. So usually not. Well, let me back up. If you fail a course, as in if you get an E in a course and get no academic credit for it, yes, you can retake it. Hopefully what you're talking about is you got like a C or a C plus or something, and it doesn't count towards your degree requirements, and you're asking if you can take that course again. And the answer is usually not. So the only circumstance in which you can retake a course that you've already taken is if that is the only course that counts towards a particular requirement. For example, if you're in the finance program and you're taking corporate finance, that is, I believe, as of right now, actually, I may be wrong. I think there's another one. Let's use financial statement analysis. There's definitely only one financial statement analysis course. So if you get a C plus in financial statement analysis and you're in the finance program, you have to retake that course. And hopefully you get a grade above a C plus. But otherwise, you need to take a different course that satisfies that same requirement. You can't get credit for the same course again. And Josh's question, no, a grade never goes away. So if you're in that very unusual situation where you get to retake a course, both grades stay on your records. So your GPA would then be, your total GPA would then be calculated after based on 13 courses rather than 12. No grades get wiped out. The only way to adjust your GPA is by getting better grades in other courses and sort of having the average move up that way. So that's the story there. Let's talk about online services. So some stuff you've had already. So the student menu in online services you've had since you first started taking courses with us. And there are a few things that are on there that you may or may not have not noticed that I'm going to point out when we go into online services in a moment. But then it's the degree candidates menu in online services that you just got recently, and that's kind of the prize stuff. That's the stuff we're going to talk about in more detail. So let's flip over into online services and talk about some of that stuff. So if you'll bear with me for just a moment. Can I get a couple of hands raised or a couple of thumbs up if you can see my web browser now? Great, thank you. Okay, so my view obviously looks a little bit different than yours because I have access to different stuff, but it's this group options box down here. That's the new thing, and you'll see in yours that it's going to say student and degree candidates. So let's just look at a couple of student things. So I just want to point these out in case you haven't noticed these before. So your biographical and contact information, it's really helpful to keep your contact information up to date with us for things like, you get emails from me all the time and from other people at the Extension School, and we're using the email address that we have on file for you in online services. So notice, even if you set up an email address with us, let's say just like a regular Gmail address, for example, and then you set up a g.harvard.edu email address, we don't have that address yet. We're still using the email address that you gave us initially. So if you want us to use that g.harvard.edu address, you got to change it in your contact information here. So do be keeping that up to date. Physical address, particularly when it comes time to, say if we wanted to mail you your diploma, say, you want to make sure that that's going to the right place. So do keep that stuff up to date. The certificate, so this guy right here, so under this graduate certificate area, you can see this certificate course tracker and request form. I'm not going to be able to get into it because I haven't taken any, actually, is that true? I did take a grad level class recently. Oh yeah, look at that. So you come in here and you pick your certificates. Say, I know we had a bunch of folks looking at the real estate certificates, so we'll pick real estate. So of course I haven't taken any courses for the real estate certificate, but this will show me all the courses that I've either taken or am currently registered in, and slot them into the various requirements for that certificate. So this is how you sort of figure out your progress towards the different certificates. And then you would go into the course search for that particular certificate. So let me make sure that everybody's clear on what I'm talking about there. So here we have the course catalog, and from this screen, ordinarily you'd be picking your finance degree courses or your management degree courses, but you can do the same thing for the certificate. I would say I pick the real estate certificate. And then over here, these are those 4 requirements that I saw on the course tracker here. And so I just filter for, say, the enterprise management requirement for that certificate, and there's the course that I need to take for it. So you've probably noticed that, let me go back to, say, the management degree courses search. If you've been fiddling around with this, you've probably noticed that there's this filter down here that you can filter for courses that count towards various certificates. The problem with this is that this now, so I filtered for the real estate certificate. This is showing me whether these courses count towards that certificate at all. They don't tell me which certificate requirements the courses count towards. So that's why I say it's really important to use this course tracker to figure out which requirements you have left to fulfill for the certificate, and then use the certificate course search from the main course catalog here, this thing down here, to figure out which courses count towards the various requirements for that certificate. You have to sort of, you have to cross-reference between the degree courses part of the course catalog and the certificate courses part of the course catalog to make sure that you're picking courses that count for both. Hope that made sense to everybody. Let me know if you have any questions about that. So anyway, the course tracker is a really valuable tool to sort of figure out where you are in getting the certificate. You don't have to request a certificate in advance. You don't have to apply for it or anything like that. You just take the courses for the certificate, and when you're done with all the courses, let me go back into this for a second. When you're done with all the courses for the certificate, you'll see little check boxes over here next to each requirement area. You'll just check off the courses that you want to apply for the certificate, and there will be a little button down at the bottom that just says request certificate, and you just request it and you get it in the mail to you. It's super easy. Nothing to it. Okay. One other thing that I wanted to point out in here is the Writing Center tutorials. I'll talk a little bit more what the Writing Center is, basically a way to get writing assistance, surprise, surprise. And you can sign up for those one-on-one tutoring sessions here in Online Services. What's great about this is that they'll do those remotely too. They'll do Skype or phone calls. So if you're writing to something that you want some assistance with, it's free, super easy to sign up for, and they can do it from wherever. So I'll talk a little bit more about the Writing Center a little bit later. Aaron asks, how many certificates can we get? So the rule is that you can earn one certificate with your degree courses. So you can overlap your degree courses with one certificate. You can also petition to be allowed to earn a second one. It just requires a petition process. It's a fairly simple petition process, and I've never seen a petition not granted. So effectively, you can probably earn two if you sort of do your planning right. The first step in that petition process, though, is to talk to me and to send me your plan for all the courses that you're going to take to count towards those two certificates. And I just need to confirm that your plan works. So if that's something you're interested in, shoot me an email and we'll talk it through. One note about there is that one course can't count towards two certificates. A course can count towards a degree requirement and a certificate, but it can't overlap to count towards two certificates. Okay, let's go over the good stuff. So the degree candidates menu. The three things I want to point out here. The first is, of course, Academic and Research Advising Appointment Scheduler. That's where you sign up for your appointments with me here in Online Services. Your academic progress reports. So we're not going to be able to see this because I don't have any because I'm not in a degree program myself. But this is where you see there are two documents in there. There's your degree requirement sheet and the course record sheet. The course record sheet is a little bit like a transcript, just kind of lists all your courses and your grades. It's also where you can see your GPA at the time. The degree requirement sheet is where you see which requirements you have left to fulfill for the degree. It's kind of like the degree version of that certificate course tracker. That gets updated every semester, every time you take a new course, and it's a really crucial tool for you to be using to make sure that you know which requirements you have left to fulfill, so you know which courses you need to be looking for in that degree courses search part of the course catalog. So sometime really soon, if you haven't yet, go into your academic progress reports, look at your degree requirement sheet, and make sure that you understand what it means and that it looks correct to you. And if you have any questions about it, be sure that you let me know, because that's kind of your map, right? That's telling you how you're gonna go about finishing the degree. So it's really important that you understand that and are sort of regularly using that and kind of know how to use it. So that's the academic progress reports. Let us talk about the course ratings. So you're going to find those in course selection tools here. And you're going to go to course instructor ratings. I want to point out that this is different from the course evaluations link. So in the student area, you've got this course evaluations. That's where you fill out an evaluation for a course that you've taken. But it's the degree candidates area where you can see the previous course ratings. So you're going to go to course selection tools and course instructor ratings. It takes a little while to load, so I loaded it in a separate tab, but this is what it looks like. This is a variation of what yours look like. You have a little bit less information than I do. So notice a few things here. So first of all, you're going to pick your term. Unfortunately, one thing you can't do that I really wish you could do is search for a single course across semesters, but you can't do that in this. So there's a little bit of like hunting around to finding the last time that a course was offered. If you really are struggling with figuring out the last time that a course was offered, shoot me an email, because I have a sort of a fast back-end way of finding that, but sometimes it just involves a little bit of hunting around. So you pick your term, and then you come down here. Let's find a management course. And please reload the page. Okay. I'm a rule follower. I'll reload the page. Never seen this before. Okay. So let's see. Let's pick a course. Let's pick investment theory and applications. So I want to spend a minute looking through this so that you're kind of clear on how to read all this. So what you'll see here, so each of these rows is one of the questions that you'll recognize from the surveys that you've filled out about all your courses at the beginning of the semester. So you can see the breakdown of the different answers. You can see the number of people who responded to each question. It's important to take note of how many people responded to both the question and to the survey overall up here, because if it's a really low percentage, that's less valid information. But if it's half or so, that's fine. That gives you a good sense. So the mean score here, this is a 4.6 is always out of 5. But what does that mean, right? Like how good is a 4.6? So you click on this details link, and this shows you, so it's actually 4.59. So the average for this question for all courses in the management program, this is the green line is for spring, was a 4.13. So 4.59 turns out is really great because that's significantly higher than the average. I generally find that averages for these questions tend to be in the 4.1, 4.15 area. So anything above that is probably pretty good. Anything below a 4.0 is getting a little bit. So anyway, but you can do that for each one of these questions. This is that sort of general, would you recommend this course question down here. So then you look at these tabs. You've got this instructor tab, just more questions about the instructor. Again, you can look at the averages. You can toggle between different instructors if there's an instructor and a bunch of different TAs. You can look through all that up here. And then to me, the real prize is this view comments by question. And the caveat is that you only get the answers to one of these questions. I wish we gave people answers to all the questions, but the question that we give people the answers to is, what would you advise students who are interested in this course? Which, to be perfectly honest, I think is the most helpful question. I just want to point out why this is useful. So things like here, make sure you attend every lecture because that's where you'll learn everything you need to know. If you take good notes, you'll do well in the exams. That's a really good piece of information to have. Read the textbook chapters more than once. Take notes. He only uses materials that he covers in the book as optional. Okay, those things seem to conflict a little bit with each other, which is sometimes what you get. Hardly use the textbook except for material that was covered in the class that I had to miss. So this is the thing. This is where you get the information about what it's really like to be in that room. Is the course really closely tied to the readings, or is it a little bit vague? Are you going to get cold called in the middle of class? So you better have read every page of the readings. Kind of on and on, like a lot of stuff about sort of instructor style. So I think what I was saying before about doing your research being a critical part of your degree planning, this is a lot of what I'm talking about. It's reading the syllabus, it's looking at prerequisites, it's planning out your calendar, and it's reading these course ratings. Really, really important. And I always say this to people when I talk about course ratings. If you've been using something like, say, Rate My Professor, because you don't have access to this now, stop using Rate My Professor. And the reason is, this is my opinion, I think Rate My Professor has a lot of shouting in it. There are a lot of very extreme opinions, lots of feelings, but less kind of useful, actionable information. And what I find in our course ratings is that people are just as honest. I don't see people pulling punches in here, but people tend to be a little bit more thoughtful and give their reasons for why they felt the way they did, which makes that useful information for you. If it's just a feeling, if it's just this is the worst course ever, why? That maybe that person didn't like it, but that very thing is something that you might really like. So I think people are more informative in here. So I would stick to this if I were you. I'm looking at Manuel's question. The feature is not very expansive for some courses. More special to the past. Feature is not very expansive. Emmanuel, and maybe you mean that there aren't that many courses yet to have been evaluated. I'm not sure exactly what you mean by that. If a course is brand new, of course, there wouldn't be anything in here. I think also sometimes if a course doesn't get enough, doesn't get a critical mass of responses, sometimes we don't post the reviews for that. Oh yeah, okay. So it sounds like, Emmanuel, you're talking about that you're looking at a course that's being offered the same course but a new instructor. So that can be sort of a tricky situation. Although what I'll say about that is I find that the instructor is a little bit more important than the course. So if you have a course that you're really interested in that's being taught by a new instructor, or say it's a new course that's being offered by an existing instructor, sometimes a trick around that is to look at other courses that that instructor has taught to get a sense of that person. I think that's like a pretty decent workaround if it's a new course. So anyway, that's kind of my opinion about it. Okay. The last thing that I want to say about course evaluations, let me go all the way back to the course list. So you saw that these were all organized by course name. If you're looking for a particular instructor, you have this instructor summary link too. And this is just organized by department and then by instructor name alphabetically. So if I really wanted to find a particular, I'm hoping that I'm spelling her name right. If I wanted to find Irene Shabari because I'd heard about her or something, I can just do a search for her and then I can go right to her courses. So that's another way that you can search for them. Okay, I want to keep moving because I just noticed the time. So let us get on out of here and go back to PowerPoint. All right, so let's talk about some of those privileges and resources that you have access to. And I'm going to be really brief about these, partially because it's later than I expected it to be, but mostly because a lot of these things aren't going to apply to everybody, and I just want you to kind of hear that they exist. And then you can either sort of do your own research about them, or you can talk to me and we can sort of get into more detail about it. But I just want you to sort of be exposed to some of the great stuff that you have access to. So early registration. So if you haven't noticed this, you get like a 4 or 5 day jump on the sort of general population when you're registering for your courses, except for summer where there is no early registration. But I think it's really helpful to use that 4 or 5 day jump now that you're a degree candidate. I've never ever seen a person closed out of a course in that 4 day period, but as soon as the general public gets access to courses, that's when courses start to fill up. So if a course is really important to you and it has limited enrollment, make sure you plan it early in advance and get in on that early registration. Of course, you're eligible for financial aid now, given other sort of eligibility considerations. I'm not an expert on financial aid. There's some good information on our website, and then we have really good financial aid people who you can work with. But if you think it's possible that you're eligible, now that you're a degree candidate, that's something you can look into. You may have noticed that summer school courses are more expensive than fall and spring and January courses, but now that you're a degree candidate, if you take a course in the summer, you get charged the fall and spring rate for that summer course. That saves you like $500, $400, $500, $600, something like that. It's a pretty sweet discount. So that's something to look forward to next summer. You can get your Harvard ID card. Of course, you can only get that in person. They don't do it remotely. Like you can't do it by mail, unfortunately. So like, if you live in Nebraska and you get a Harvard ID so that you can get like student discounts on movie tickets, just got to do it. You just got to come to campus and get your ID, and then you can get your cheaper movie tickets. But if you're around, your ID card can get you into, like, you can get a really cheap membership to a gym if you're around here. You can get into all the museums that we have on campus and the libraries, and the museums and libraries here are, of course, fantastic. You can also, if you're ever here on campus, for a weekend or whatever, there's free printing at our computer lab location at 53 Church Street, like free black and white printing. You just need an ID card to get in. So that's another good reason to have an ID. All right, the faculty aid program. So faculty aid is basically a way to be a research assistant to a faculty member. There are a couple different ways to do it. There's an email that goes out once a semester. I imagine that it'll be coming out in the next couple of weeks, that basically lists the sort of job postings that faculty have given us. So you can apply, you can respond to that email and apply for a position that way. But you can also approach an instructor yourself. Like if you have an instructor who you really connected with and you really are really interested in doing research in that area, you can just go to that instructor and say, hey, loved your course. I'm really interested in this topic area. Would you be, are you interested in having a research assistant? And then they can work with us on the back end to sort of set up the sort of employment situation. So something to consider if research is something you're considering getting into, or you're just really interested in a topic. One thing to know that I really hate, but that's only eligible for people who are eligible to work in the United States. So that's usually doesn't work for international students. Domestic students who are at a distance, some instructors will work with you at a distance. So if you're not local, you still could consider that. But unfortunately, it's not. Most international students are not eligible for it. So the Graduate School of Education, tuition voucher, and special student status, I'll just say a word about these. So these are these two programs that you can use to potentially take courses at other schools at the university. So the tuition voucher, that's specifically for the Graduate School of Education. It's a way that you can get a free course at the Graduate School of Education. Both of these programs are only for on-campus courses. None of the schools are offering are making sort of significant online offerings yet. So it's really only for if you can sort of be on campus for a fall or a spring. So the tuition voucher is specifically for the Graduate School of Education. Special student status is a way that you can conceivably take courses at other schools at the university. There's some hurdles to jump over, and it's a bit of a process. So if that's something that you're at all interested in, sort of potentially considering like pursuing taking courses at another school at the university while you're here, and getting degree credit for them, read up a little bit about it on our website, and then like set up an appointment with me and we can talk about it. So it's a good option if that's sort of a possibility for you. And finally, the Harvard Innovation Lab. It's kind of an amazing place. It's this entrepreneurship incubator. It's housed at the Harvard Business School, but it's not a part of the business school. It's available to the whole university. So I'll just say this: if you are sort of entrepreneurial of spirit, if you have an idea for a product or a company that you're thinking about, you should really, really check out the Harvard Innovation Lab. You can just do a Google search for Harvard Innovation Lab and you find it. Get on their email list, check out their website. It's an amazing place. The resources there are astounding. I've had a few students in our program create ventures out of the Innovation Lab, and they've had a pretty remarkable experience with it. So I sort of can't say enough about it, but just check out on the website and then talk to me about it if you want to. Aaron, we can talk about Crimson Careers in just a minute. We'll get to that when we talk about career services stuff. So that was sort of special privileges. Let's talk about some of the resources that you have access to now. I already said the Harvard libraries. There are a phenomenal number of sort of online tools, like online resources that the libraries get you access to. So check those out for sure. If you have an ID card when you're on campus, you can get yourself into any of the libraries. So the Writing Center, again, that was that way that you can sign up for free one-on-one tutoring on your writing, either remotely or in person. And we saw how you can sign up for those appointments and online services. The thing that I want to say about the Writing Center is that it's not general writing tutoring. It's specifically, it's like an assignment for a course. So essentially you have to come to them with a rough draft of a paper that you're writing for a course assignment, and they'll work with you on that. It's not just like, how do I become a better writer in general? But again, if that's something that's appealing to you, it's free, super easy to sign up for, and I've heard really great stuff about it. Looking at what will we get in the Harvard Innovation Lab? Gina, for time purposes, I'm gonna let you do your research on sort of the different services that the Innovation Lab offers, and then we can talk about it more one-on-one if you're interested in getting into it in more detail. Getting access to the iLab is a different thing. We actually have a little bit of information on our website about this. To get physical access to the iLab, you either need to be on a team with a full-time Harvard student, or you need to be taking at least 2 courses in any given semester with us, and then you can apply to us for sort of special access to it. A little bit of detail in there. Do some reading. If it's something that you're interested in, let's talk about it, and we'll sort of get into more detail about that. Okay, so the Bureau of Study Council, this is just a funny name for what Harvard calls its like academic tutoring center. It's primarily geared towards Harvard College, so I don't have a lot of students using it, and they sort of don't guarantee that they will always have a tutor for like a particular topic that one of our students will be like wants the help in. However, they've told us that they're willing to try to find a tutor. So say you're taking an economics class and you're struggling, you could come to me and say, I'm interested in checking out that tutoring, and we could talk to the Bureau of Study Council and see if they can find somebody. Because it's students, it's mostly sort of peer tutoring. See if they can find somebody who can work with you. So if that's something you're interested in, just get in touch with me. We have a special arrangement with the Bureau of Study Council that extension students can't approach them directly. You need to get it referred by us. So if this is something you're interested in, talk to me and we'll figure it out. So CARC is the Career and Academic Resource Center, and they offer these online webinars, these workshops on a huge variety of topics. Academic topics like public speaking, applying for a PhD program, procrastination, applying to grad school, career topics like interviewing, you're getting your LinkedIn profile. They have these little career path spotlights where they bring in alumni who are on a particular career path, and they just kind of interview them for a little while. All that's free. You had access to this when you were just a regular course taker. But I just like to sort of point these out that it's a really great free resource. A lot of them happen like at lunchtime. And also most of them are recorded. So you can also look at the archives for them too. But there's some great stuff in there. And finally, let's talk about the Office of Career Services. This is where I'm going to get back to Aaron's question about Crimson Careers. So OCS gets its own slide because it's pretty incredible. So Linda Spencer is our career advisor for the extension school, and she's sort of specifically and exclusively for extension students. Again, you're going to get these slides emailed to you later, so don't worry about writing down phone numbers or websites and stuff like that. So Linda, what's great about what Linda does is that she can sort of work with folks on the whole career cycle, from what do I want to do with my life, to networking, searching, writing resume, cover letter, negotiating salary, changing jobs, kind of the whole thing. So what I often tell folks is that wherever you are in your path, if you're very happy in your job and you don't plan on going anywhere for the next 5 years, now that you're a degree candidate, I think it's still a good idea at some point while you're a student with us to set up an appointment with Linda. She'll talk with you on Skype or over the phone or in person, whichever, and just kind of get her to lay out for you what the sort of suite of resources that you have access to in career services is, because you have access to this forever. So once you're an alum, you have the same level of access to career services as you do when you're a current student. So if you have this conversation with her now that you're kind of in Harvard mode, then 10 years from now, when you decide I really use some help rewriting my resume, you might think, oh yeah, I can go back to the Office of Career Services and get some help on that. I think it's worthwhile having a conversation with her just to sort of get familiar with what there is. The thing that Aaron mentioned, Crimson Careers, that's the system that the Office of Career Services uses. It's a job board, like a job posting service, and it's also where you set up appointments to meet with Linda. If you're having trouble logging into Crimson Careers, I think sometimes it takes a little bit for information about new students to flow from us over to them. So it might just be a time thing. You can also just call their main line. And again, you can just call this number that you're going to get this slide, and you'll have this phone number. You can just call them, and the front desk can help you figure out if it's a problem with the way you're logging in, or if it's just that your information hasn't gotten over there yet. Daphna asks the webinar archives. So if you look for the CARC webinars, the page that lists all the current webinars, there'll be a link at the top of that page that you'll get you to the archives. So check that out, and if you have a hard time finding it, shoot me an email and I'll send it to you. Emanuela says there are a couple of really good CARC webinars coming up. That's great. Yeah, thanks for pointing that out, Emanuela. Yeah, and you'll get emails from Linda Spencer pretty frequently, and I think also from CARC directly about sort of upcoming things. So keep an eye on that. All right. I'll pause for just a moment to see if there are any burning questions. I'm at like my last couple of, really this is my last sort of substantive slide. I know it's 1:20, so, but I'll pause for just a moment because we've been talking about a lot of stuff. Any other questions about any of the sort of privileges and resources that we've talked about? Again, this is just a taste of it. There's a ton more stuff on our website, and if you ever want to get into detail about any of this, set up an appointment with me and we'll go through it. But I'll just pause for a second. Finished my water, so let's plow ahead. Okay, Harvard Network. Just a couple of thoughts about connecting with this place and with your classmates, because this is like the thing that I hear about more than anything else from you folks, is that like, hey, it's kind of hard to feel connected to this institution and to my faculty and to my instructors because people are at a distance and people have jobs and have lives, and like, I get it. And it is hard. There's no way around that. It's just kind of hard. Because everybody has lives and other people have other responsibilities. The general thing that I like to say to folks is that like networking and like making connections with people in this program is totally a different thing than it was if you went to like a traditional residential 4-year college, because you don't fall into relationships now. I think I find this with like making friends as an adult too. Like it's work to like make, you know, you have to sort of like plan dates with your friends to sort of get to know a new person. And it's totally like that in terms of networking with your classmates. It's, you got to put some energy into it if it's important to you. But I find that if you do, there are good ways to do it. But if you wait for networking to come to you in this program, it kind of won't. So a few thoughts. Nobody likes to hear me say this, but this is such a good idea. Setting up study groups in your online classes is such a good way to network and get connected with people and to sort of get better at the material in your classes. So, you know, you can do this a few different ways. You post a message in the Canvas site. You ask your instructor if you can make a quick announcement at the very beginning of the class. You say, hey, here's my email address or whatever. Here's my phone number. I have a Zoom account. We're gonna meet for an hour before class every week, and we're gonna discuss the material. Sign in if you want. You know, 4 or 5 people show up to that regularly. You're making connections with them. You're discussing the material, and you're getting a better grasp on the material. And then, you know, when you're signing up for your next classes, those are some people you talk to, and like you know them a little bit. This is how these things happen. I hear this story all the time, but I sense when I sort of make this suggestion, people are like, oh, it's like more work like for my class. But that's what I'm saying. It's a little bit. It's a little bit of work. But people tend to make connections with people in their classes more than anywhere else. So finding a way to connect with people about the course material in your classwork is a great way to do this. Can't recommend it enough. Okay, there are those LinkedIn groups. Hopefully by now you've gotten invitations to the 2 LinkedIn groups, the one for the whole extension school and the one for our program. If I'm smart, I will include links to those groups in my follow-up email to this, so that if you haven't gotten those invitations yet, you can go in and request access to them. You know, our LinkedIn groups don't get used very much, but there's no really good reason for that. People just kind of don't use them that much. But you could be posting messages on there. You can look up information about your classmates and get in touch with people if you live in the same area or if you have sort of similar interests. So it can be a really good way. Again, you just kind of have to use it. The mentor program, I mentioned this briefly in the email, the invitation to this. The mentor program is pretty informal. It's basically a way where I'm matching you folks with a student who's been in the program for a little bit longer. It's basically a way for you to kind of talk through anything that you want to talk about with a more experienced student. You want to talk about sort of work-life balance stuff. You want to talk about the residency requirement. You want to get some ideas about courses, course selection, degree requirements. It really can be anything. It can be just simply a way to have a connection with another person in the program. So I'm going to send in that follow-up email, I'm going to send you a few questions that you can respond to if you're interested in being matched up with a mentor. just so I have a little bit more information about you, and then I'll just kind of do the matching. I really encourage you to give it a shot if it's something you're interested in. Again, it requires some work on your part. It's an active kind of thing. But it can be a really good way to get connected with somebody. I'll say this, that it's primarily I'm doing the matching based on academics and like geographic location, if I possibly can. It's not primarily like a professional networking thing, just because like the number of the number of people I'm talking about is fairly small, so it's hard for me to really match up in terms of professional interests other than at the very, very highest level. So I do that when I can, but I mostly think of this as a way to have a person to talk with sort of about the program. So that's I sort of look to it sort of in that way. So, but I really encourage you to sign up for that if you're interested in it. For folks who are at a distance, a lot of the local Harvard alumni clubs will allow current students to get involved. It's not all of them, and they all kind of set their own rules, so you have to just kind of reach out to your local club. But the Harvard Alumni Association has a function where you can sort of search for like the local Harvard club near you. And I've had a few students like really get involved in their local club, and it can be a really cool way just to feel like to be physically sort of in proximity with other people who are associated with Harvard. So something to think about a little bit. And I would love to, if you end up doing that, I'd love to sort of hear your story about kind of how that went or kind of what your experience was. Not says you're in the HBS alumni group. Great. Yeah, sure. I mean, there's no reason not to ask, right? The worst they can say is, oh no, we don't allow current students in, whatever. But a lot of folks have had like really good experiences with this. And of course, if you are local, or if you're coming to campus for a short period of time, there are events going on all over the place. Some of the student clubs of the extension school have events that are going. For this whole academic year, our like student activities office here is doing a lot of these like Friday evening happy hours, like before an on-campus weekend. So especially if you're coming for one of those required residency weekends, make sure that you take a look to see if there's one of those happy hours that's happening. You may even get one of the ones that I'm hosting. Hey. So again, just a cool way to meet folks when the opportunity presents itself. So those are my thoughts on that. If you have more thoughts, or if you've had other experiences that you want to share with me, send them my way, because I love sort of sharing this information with people. But again, the common denominator is you got to put some effort into it, but then it can be really really valuable. Okay, again, don't write any of this down. You're going to get these slides. They're just some important contact information for you to have. The one that I want to point out specifically is the help desk, the one at the bottom. This phone number is staffed at all hours that online classes are taking place. So if you're having technical trouble, like sign into a class, in Zoom or in the Canvas site or whatever, you can always call them. So don't muddle around missing class. Give them a call and get yourself back online. And you'll have these slides. Okay, some final thoughts. Remember, you got that email from the admissions office that there's that website that they sent you to that has some time-sensitive information on it. Just make sure that you've checked out that website and see if there's anything that you need to take care of. Again, I'm going to email out a link to the recording of this webinar, because this time I remembered to record it, because last time I didn't, and that was really frustrating. And you'll also get a link to the slides, so you can see, to review this stuff. Please read your email. I only send things to you that I think will be useful for you to know. So, just keep up on it. And remember, if you change your email address, make sure that you give us the new email address in online services. And remember, again, if you're interested in being connected with an experienced mentor, respond to that email, answer the questions that I put in there, and I'll get you hooked up. And that, my friends, is it. I'll pause for a minute and see if there are any last questions for the whole group. Then I'll stop the recording, and then I'll just kind of hang out for a few minutes in case anybody wants to ask a question sort of offline. Elliot asks, taking less than 12 units per semester and we don't need to worry about health insurance. Exactly right. It's only at 12 credits that health insurance becomes a factor at all. Any questions about anything before we call it a day? Jamie set up an advising appointment. Great. See you soon. Okay, so I'll just say thank you to everybody for sticking with it for an hour and a half. That was a marathon session. Well done, y'all. Again, I'll hang out a little bit in case anybody you want to ask a question sort of that's not in the recording. So again, welcome to all of you to the program, and hope I'll talk to you really soon.